How do and welcome back. My name is Andrew Hancock and I'm a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with the VMware products since their inception in 1998, so that's 23 years I've been working with the VMware product line. Some of you may say if you cut Andy in half it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool. I've also written over 100 articles for Experts Exchange and won many other awards and accolades. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program for the last 11 years and more recently a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 2. Welcome back, and in the next VMware Hancock's VMware half hour I'm going to show you how to install VMware Tools for Windows on a VMware Windows virtual machine on our Dell PowerEdge R730. Which obviously we installed ESXi 7.0.2 on in part 1. VMware Tools is not an optional installation. There are many questions that have been asked on Experts Exchange where people basically got issues. They find that guest OS shutdown doesn't work. They've got the wrong network interface installed. So VMware Tools is not an optional piece of software, and a lot of people basically forget to install it. And if we actually go back to our Windows Server 2019 machine that we installed in part 6, and I've not done anything with it. I've installed 2 applications. I've installed Google Chrome and I've installed another application that we'll look at later, but other than that it's exactly the same. Now, one thing I have actually basically done, and I've spent probably 30 or 40 minutes in doing, and it's just a personal preference that I like to do, is I like to ensure that my Windows servers or Windows desktops, operating systems, or any operating system that I've installed is fully patched until I actually install VMware Tools. So that being said, for the last 30 minutes I've been updating, shutting down, updating, shutting down Windows Server 2019, so it's got no more updates now, and I can sort of kind of show you that quickly. If we go to obviously settings, updates and security, and I click check for updates, hopefully there are no more updates because we're update done. Okay, now you may have noticed in the background here, if I just basically big X out of that, you may have noticed there that this is actually, even in the later versions of ESXi now, it's even actually telling us VMware Tools is not installed in this virtual machine. VMware Tools allows detailed guest information to be displayed, as well allowing you to perform operations on the guest OS, great for shutdowns, reboots, etc. You should install VMware Tools. I cannot stress enough, it's not optional. It needs to be installed. And you will also basically see here that it says VMware Tools is not installed. You know, it's not running, it's not installed. You will see that change, and you will see an IP address information appear there. And you will see install say yes and the version number. Now, all this is actually basically covered in an article that I have written on Experts Exchange, which actually basically shows you how to install VMware Tools if you actually basically want some written material to follow. Otherwise, just follow me. There's a couple of other things that I actually basically want to pick up on. This virtual server, this guest OS virtual machine, has left as we left it really in part 6. One of the things that you really must get into the habit of doing is do not leave the data store ISO connected. So I actually basically like to select host device and untick these 2 and click save, and that then basically will disappear. I've seen many questions again on Experts Exchange where you can't unmount a data store, or a vMotion doesn't work, or just a query as to why is my virtual machine using 2 data stores. It will use 2 data stores because there is a connected ISO on that data store that it's using. The other thing, there was some discussions many years ago about a floppy drive connected, or an ISO connected, or a CD-ROM drive connected that polls in the operating system in the guest operating system or the host operating system, and can potentially reduce performance. I'm not quite sure if that's true, but you know, if you've finished with the operating, if you've finished with the CD-ROM, the DVD, just disconnect it. Don't leave it connected. Okay, so how do we install VMware Tools for Windows? So if we actually basically click Actions and we click Guest OS, then we've got a lovely little guide now that sort of kind of points us in the right direction, that tells us how to install VMware Tools. So we click Install VMware Tools. Now, a lot of people think that that's going to do some sort of magic and that's all going to work and that's now finished, etc. But really all VMware, all that really does, and you can just see it pop up there, and I'm going to click, all that really does is just cleverly mount a Windows.ISO, which is currently installed with our ESX hypervisor. If you actually basically nose around and browse around your ESXi hypervisor, you'll come across a Windows.ISO, and the contents inside that basically are VMware Tools. So really all that button's doing, all it's doing is just mapping that Windows ISO into our virtual machine. Now, auto run is sort of kind of been disabled for many years, but now we have a feature basically that's telling us, you know, what do you want to do. I'm going to leave that there, but I'm just actually going to show you that if I actually click File Explorer and look at the PC, then you can actually basically see there the D drive, which is our CD-ROM drive, has the VMware Tools disk mounted. Now, be warned, if you've not created a virtual machine with a DVD drive, clicking that button is not going to do anything, and you're probably going to sit there puzzled for a while. Why isn't VMware Tools popping up? You need to have a CD drive to use that functionality. Obviously, if you have a network PC connected to the internet, or you have a repository of VMware Tools that you've downloaded, or you're using SCOM or SCCM or Active Directory to push out applications, there's another mechanism of actually basically installing it. But as I actually mentioned, if you use templates that we'll look at later in vCenter Server, you only need to do this once. You only need to set your guest OS up once, and the next time you can use templates to deploy. So I'm going to click the CD, and I'm just going to go basically through a standard VMware Tools installation. I'm not really going to use an awful lot of thought. I'm just going to click next, 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 and finish. So VMware Tools version, of course, it is a piece of software, it is an application, it does contain, sometimes it does contain bugs, sometimes it does need updating, sometimes there are security issues found, so bear that in mind. It's something that you need to basically schedule on your watering and feeding of your guest OS, add it to your checks, add it to your monthly patch cycle, that you may need to basically update VMware Tools as well. So we're going to click next, and we're going to say typical, and we're going to say install, and that's obviously going to go off and then copy a load of files, start some services, install some drivers. There's a mouse driver, there's a memory control driver, there's a network driver, storage driver, and then click finish. It's going to prompt me basically to restart, so I'm going to say yes, we'll restart. We'll restart the server, and if we look carefully here, it now actually basically tells us that VMware Tools version is compliant. So it's obviously picked up very quickly that VMware Tools is now installed in the machine. So yes, it's installed. That's the VMware Tools version. It's running, and when it does a refresh, hopefully it will pick up the IP address as well. So I'm just going to log into this virtual machine. So I'm going to say Control-Alt-Delete. Okay, can you actually basically see now that it's pulled in the host name and it's pulled in the IP address of this machine? That's the IPv4 and that's the IPv6 IP addresses. Now the screen's actually gone a little bit smaller. That's because it's now using a VMware driver, and we can fix that. So what I'm going to do, although this is hot plug, and we'll do this hot plug. We'll do this hot plug. Why not? Why not? We'll do this hot plug. So basically, I'm going to go back to my virtual machine. I mentioned before about that our network interface was using this E100E. An E100E interface is sort of kind of emulated. It's not a fully highly virtualized driver like the VMXnet 3. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say add a network adapter, and it's popped up here, network adapter 1. No, it's not. It's popped up here, network adapter. I'm going to connect to the same network, but I'm going to use the drop down here, and I'm actually going to change it to VMFXnet 3. Still powered on, and I'm going to click save. Now that's actually going to basically hot plug another network interface into our virtual machine without us having to restart. And if I actually basically now look at our settings in the virtual machine, networking, okay, can you actually basically see there that there's another IPv6, and at the moment, because it's not actually fetched an IP address from DHCP, there's another IP address there. And if we actually basically look here, you can now actually basically see that we've got two network interfaces. And if we just change the adapter options and we view them in a list, view details in a list, then you can actually see one is the VMFXnet 3 Ethernet, and the other one is the Intel E1000E. And there we go, you can see that that's just picked up another IP address from our DHCP server, same LAN, and we've got an IP address there, 182.117, 182.111. And that's changing. I actually think I know what's going on there really with that, and that's a bit strange. But we'll look at that in a minute. There's just one other thing that I'm actually going to do that I've actually basically noticed at the present, and that's what we can do now is that we can basically go back to our settings, because we don't want the E1000E interface. We don't want that at all. And that was network adapter 1. So we're just going to big X that, save that. And basically we've just removed it because, as I said, these are hot plug, so effectively we've removed that interface. And one thing I'm actually going to do is I'm now going to shut this machine down, other unplanned, because I want to make one change which isn't hot plug, that I have noticed that if you don't set your video card to specify custom settings, one display, let's just put 8 gig, power that back on again. There we go, there's a better, there's a better resolution size than we have before. Now I think there's something very goofy going on with the network here and the DHCP server, because what's actually happening here is this virtual machine is requesting an IP address from the DHCP server. It's getting an IP address from the DHCP server. But then I think what's actually happening then is it's actually basically finding a clash with an IP address on this laboratory LAN, and it's then basically conflicting and it's then releasing it. So that's what we're actually sort of kind of seeing, this sort of kind of polling behavior. Now, because it's saying there 192.168.182.117. Well, I know that IP address, I think, is definitely been allocated to the iDRAC card. So I don't know why we've actually basically got that going on. It could just be idiot me has not actually reserved that in. Yeah, we've definitely got something weird going on there with so most definitely this particular machine is grabbing an IP address which is 117, but 117 is already allocated to the iDRAC card, and when it actually basically gets that IP address, it's then right. Let's see whether or not we can fix this live, as this was a very short video and we've only been going for about 15 minutes. There we go, it's dropped out again there, see? Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to basically turn off the camera and turn off the mic. I'm going to go and have a little look at DHCP server, and we'll get this fixed, and I'll come back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, had a bit of a brain fart there. That's because that when we actually basically installed our ESXi server in part 1, it was DHCP, and I actually basically changed it to static, but I didn't reserve the IP address 192.168.182.117 on the DHCP server. And of course, what was actually basically what was happening there was, rightly, the virtual machine was actually requesting an IP address. It was getting 117, which was the next to be allocated, but there was no reservation, and the DHCP server didn't know that that was already in use by the ESXi host. So the host was 117, the DHCP server was giving the VM 117, it was obtaining a 117 address, but then there's a check that's performed, and then there's a conflict, and then it's releasing the IP address again, and then it's getting 117 again. So basically just a quick logged into the DHCP server, just reserved 117 for our host as a static, and then obviously shortly, as I did that, it's basically popped up correctly. So there we go, a little bit of an aside, but as I said, you know, these are the gaffes that we have to live with in IT. So there we go, we've successfully managed to install. Not only have we installed VMware Tools for Windows on our Windows Server 2019, but I've also basically showed you how to disconnect the ISO from the virtual machine. We've then added a VMX Net3 interface hot plug. We've removed the E1000E interface hot plug. Showed you that all that's working correctly. Change the actual basic settings in the video display by actually basically specifying amount of RAM that we want to use rather than using default settings. What tends to happen if you find default settings, you tend to find that your video screen, your virtual machine video screen, doesn't auto size correctly depending upon what resolution you're looking at it on your Windows workstation. So that's why I did that. So in this particular video, that's really all I've got to show you in how we install VMware Tools. Remember, it is important, it's not an optional piece of software, and if you actually basically start building templates from this first virtual machine, you shouldn't have to install virtual VMware Tools again. Just as an aside, the driver for the VMX Net 3 interface is included in the VMware Tools for Windows. So if you don't have VMware Tools for Windows installed, you're going to have that issue in the device manager with an exclamation mark against the VMX Net 3 interface telling you that there's no driver installed. So just bear that in mind. But again, you know, do not leave out VMware Tools for Windows. It's required, it's important. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching. Please come back in what will be part 8 when we install Ubuntu, and then in part 9 we'll install VMware Tools for Ubuntu. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Thanks very much. Keep safe, look after yourselves out there, and goodbye.